Right, Colin Clarke is with the Soufan Center. He's written a lot on Afghanistan, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, ISIS-K, and he's an expert on terrorism and insurgencies. Hi, Colin.
Thanks for having me.
Look, that is a bloody, brutal attack on the hospital in Kabul this week. 20 people killed, at least 16 injured. A hallmark of ISIS and Al Qaeda, frankly. What is going on? Why are they attacking the Taliban?
Well, ISIS is attacking the Taliban because they're mortal enemies. They're at odds with one another. You've got on one side of the ledger the Taliban, their Haqqani allies, and Al Qaeda, and ISIS on the other, and they fundamentally disagree with how Afghanistan should be governed. The Taliban's extreme. Believe it or not, ISIS-K is even more extreme than the Taliban.
And what are they looking to do? Are they looking to destabilize Afghanistan and try to rout the Taliban, which seems impossible at this point?
Yeah, I think that ISIS-K is really fighting for survival. The Taliban is the organization that needs to stamp out what remains of ISIS-K, while ISIS-K is trying to hold on to what territory it is able to operate freely in. It's trying to show the Afghan people that the Taliban is incapable of providing effective governance and security. Look, the roles have been switched. This was what the Taliban have been doing to the Afghan government and the US-led coalition for the last 20 years. Now the Taliban is effectively the counterinsurgent, while ISIS is staging an upstart insurgency.
Yeah, Taliban is an insurgency. Suddenly, what strategy, what tactics, what expertise do they have in fighting a counterinsurgency?
None, frankly, and we're seeing that. That's evident right now. And so, even though the Taliban, both qualitatively and quantitatively, are superior to ISIS-K, the Islamic State is going to be a thorn in its side for the foreseeable future. This isn't, a group that's going to go away lightly. And I think, we're seeing right now that the Taliban struggles to protect Afghan civilians. IS-K is highly sectarian. And so the Taliban's even accused of, not caring about Shia Hazara. And I think, for me, there's two big issues. One, does this draw foreign fighters into the country? And I think, the answer to that is going to be yes. The follow-up question becomes, how many, and is it significant? Excuse me. And then also the role of regional.
Well, let me jump in there before you go on with the other also.
Sure.
And is this a shadow of what we saw in Iraq and Syria, where suddenly this fight by Islamic State becomes a rallying cry in the Arab world?
Well, I don't think it will be in the Arab world because, this is Afghanistan. And so it's a non-Arab population. You may see Muslims traveling from the region itself. Remember, a foreign fighter is anyone from outside of Afghanistan. So I think, from Central Asian countries, from Pakistan, from other parts of the immediate surrounding region, you may have a trickle of Westerners, Europeans, and others. But I think this will likely remain a regional fight.
And Chechens, who have been fighting in there a lot against US forces and NATO forces.
Yeah, Chechens and Uyghurs and Uzbeks and others. Again, that was directly connected to the second point I was going to make, which is how do regional countries and those powers respond? Iran, Russia, China, et cetera. And so that's a question I think that's still to be determined.
What is the West's view on this now? I mean, do they step in and try and support the Taliban, who they've been fighting for 20 years? Or do they take on the Islamic State, and ignore the Taliban and their conflict? I mean, how in the world do we navigate this?
It's a terrible predicament. There's really zero good options. It's pick your poison, more or less. And so even if the United States and its allies, work to defeat ISIS-K, which they, plan to, that helps the Taliban. The Taliban has within its leadership members of the Haqqani network, which is a U.S. designated FTO. And so it's really just terrible options for the United States, which is now operating with pretty minimal leverage in Afghanistan.
And if they decide they want to go against ISIS-K, or carry out operations against ISIS-K, how do they do it? I mean, and do it from what territory?
Yeah, this is the whole conundrum of over the horizon. And we're already seeing the complications of that. We saw that with the August 29th strike. that led to the deaths of 10 civilians, including 7 children. I think that's emblematic, really, of what we're likely to see with Over the Horizon. And does it make the U.S. gun shy to go after, ISIS-K high-ranking, high value targets and militants? Probably. And with that, do we have this group that's able to kind of gain a toehold and expand in parts of eastern Afghanistan along the border with Pakistan? And if you listen to Colin Call's testimony, 6 to 12 months from now, potentially pose a serious threat to the West.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you really believe that ISIS-K suddenly would pose a serious threat to the West from Afghanistan? How?
Look, I think we've underestimated ISIS at every turn. If you look at the capabilities of this group, how they've managed to plot external operations, I'm talking about ISIS globally. I certainly don't think we can count out. It would be, foolish to think that ISIS-K couldn't put together, an external operations unit capable of attacking the West. There was an attempt in April 2020 in Germany linked back to ISIS-K. So I think clearly the intent is there. They're now working on growing the capability.
And where is Al-Qaeda in all of this?
Exactly. You rarely hear about Al-Qaeda or read about Al-Qaeda, which should be a huge concern. I think Al-Qaeda is biding its time. It's thrilled that the Taliban's back in power, and they're continuing to do what Bruce Hoffman, said several years ago, which is quietly and patiently rebuilding. That's worked well for them, and I don't see them changing strategy anytime soon.
If you were advising the U.S. government right now, and I know you're not, but would you, maybe you are, would you advise them to take on ISIS sooner than later? Because if you don't, it will come back and bite you.
Yeah, I mean, you have to deal with ISIS, even if it is at the cost of helping the Taliban. Whether we like it or not, the Taliban's the de facto government of Afghanistan. I think you deal with the ISIS threat first, and then you figure out how to move forward with the Taliban.
Are you advising the U.S. government?
No, I'm not.
All right. I wanted to clarify that since I raised it. I'm saying that with a smile.
No.
Colin, thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
Thanks.